He almost walked past me on State Street. My name is Arthur Hayes, 65 years old, a retired architect, reduced to a paper cup and a bruise I couldn't explain. While my son-in-law drained my pension, I told everyone, I'm fine. If you've ever looked away because it was family, don't scroll. Chapter 1 is the moment my son lifts my chin and says, "This ends now. Stay. Someone you love may need this." And don't forget to subscribe.
Chicago in August smells like hot concrete in Lake Michigan. The L screeched overhead on Wabash, and I stood half-hidden behind a bus shelter at State and Monroe, collar raised, a paper cup trembling in my hands. $11.42. I counted twice, even though math was the least of my problems. "Here you go," a woman's voice said. Coins clinked. I nodded without raising my eyes. Eye contact invited questions, and questions got back to Brent. Brent Nolan, my son-in-law. 6'4", a gym membership built on rage and other people's money. 8 months ago, I'd opened my front door in the suburbs, Oak Park, the kind of neighborhood with maples leaning into each other and kids on scooters, and told my daughter Carolyn and Brent, stay as long as you need. Their apartment had flooded. I cleared out my drafting studio for them, bought furniture, built a queen bed from a box with my own hands. The first week, Brent kept calling me sir. He took off his shoes in the foyer. He fixed the gutter. He smiled with all his teeth. And then, the ground started moving. I felt him before I saw him. The gait, the shoulders, the way the air changes when someone you love is close. I curled in on myself, pulled my collar higher. Please, not him. Not like this. My son, Mason, lives in Denver. Software, practical to a fault. We text on Sundays. I always answered, all good. I taught him to believe me when I said that. That's the part that hurts the most.
Footsteps stopped in front of me. Silence stretched, the thick kind that muffles sirens and crowds. Then, "Dad?" The word cracked in the middle. Mason crouched, bringing his eyes level with mine, careful the way he is with frightened animals and broken things. Hands steady, voice softer than I deserved. "Dad, look at me." I tried not to, but he lifted my chin with a gentleness I'd almost forgotten. He saw me. Saw the bruise, saw the jacket that had belonged to better days. He saw the cup, saw how tightly I held it like it was the only thing between me and the ocean. "What happened?" he asked, quiet thunder. I swallowed. The lie stuck in my throat. The truth burned going down. "Brent," I whispered. "He takes everything. Says he'll have me declared incompetent if I say a word." Mason's mouth became a line. He took the cup from my hands and set it on the ground like we were burying something. Then he slipped his jacket off his arm and stood, calm, deliberate, like he was stepping into a job he already knew how to do. "Come on, Dad. We're done here." Fear rose, reflexive and sour. "If Brent finds out?" "He won't," he said, and the weight under the words told me there was more. "And if he does, he answers to me." In the car, he didn't start the engine right away. He just let me breathe. Outside, Chicago kept moving, the faceless confidence of a city in a hurry. Inside, everything in me that had been clenched for months began to unfurl. "Tell me everything," he said. And for the first time, I did. If this cracked your heart even a little, don't scroll past. Subscribe now. Someone you love may need this story when betrayal knocks on their door. The night I opened my door to family, I thought I was saving them. Turns out, I was handing over the keys to my life. Flashback 8 months. Snow in the gutters. Frost on the windows. Caroline's voice on the phone was small, like when she scraped her knee at 5 and tried not to cry. "Dad, the ceiling caved in. We have nowhere to go." "Come home," I said. 2 words I meant with my whole chest. I'd been alone since Rose passed, her laugh still clinging to the corners of our house if you knew where to listen. I cleared my drafting table, boxed up old blueprints, pushed my life to the walls to make space for theirs. Bought furniture, a bed I sanded smooth, a couch that swallowed you whole on Sundays. Brent carried boxes with big swing energy, calling me sir every other sentence. Caroline kissed my cheek and smelled like the lavender shampoo she'd used in high school. The first month was family sitcom lighting. Brent fixed the leaky faucet. He offered to pay utilities and I said no. He watched the Bears with me and yelled at the TV with performative loyalty. "It's good to have you here," I told him one night. He smiled like a man who'd learned where the cameras live. Then came the Tuesday in April when my pension hit. 35 years of work finally turning into something you can deposit. $10,000 on the first business day of the month. I made coffee from the good beans and sat in the morning light feeling proud in a way I hadn't since ribbon cuttings. Brent walked in with that smile. "Hey, Art," he said, casual. "Let me help you with transferring everything to a household account. Less hassle." I laughed, light. "That's kind, Brent, but I can—" Caroline put a hand on my shoulder. "Dad, he's good with money. It'll make things simpler." He held out his hand for my debit card. "Just for groceries, sir. I forgot mine." He said it like a joke he'd told before. I handed it over. Habit. Trust. Love. He didn't hand it back. When I asked about it the next day, he set his beer down slowly. "Do you not trust your own family?" Caroline looked at the floor. Something inside me pulled tight, an old beam groaning under new weight.
2 weeks later, he brought a lawyer who introduced himself too fast and smiled with his lips only. "Power of attorney. Standard elder care planning," he said, tapping the paper. "Protects your daughter in an emergency." I read the words. I understood almost none of them. Caroline stood behind me, her hand on my shoulder. The pressure said, "We're doing this." Brent said, "Unless you don't trust Caroline." I signed. A notary I'd never seen before stamped it. Brent paid her in cash. Later, he collected the papers like a man gathering winning lottery tickets and patted my shoulder. "We'll take care of you," he said, and for the first time the sentence didn't sound like a promise, it sounded like a sentence. That's how it begins, not with fists, with favors, with "let me help," with little compromises so small you don't notice you're shrinking, until one day you're standing on State Street with a paper cup. In the car, Mason listened, no judgment, just the calculation of a man who builds systems. "You're not crazy," he said finally. "You're being abused. In Illinois, financial exploitation of an elderly person is a felony." The word felony rearranged my insides. Grant called it family business. The world called it a crime. Mason started the engine. "We're going to your house," he said, voice steady, "and we're ending this." Teaser. In 10 minutes of story time, we open the door and let the wolf in. Next, we walk back into that house with someone who bites back. If you've ever said yes to keep the peace and watched it cost you everything, hit like. Don't leave without subscribing. These karma stories are how we heal and get justice together.
We rolled past the stone and brick homes in Oak Park, the ones with porches that know every season. My house, the craftsman with the blue-gray siding and hand-carved railings I restored after Rose died, looked the same from the outside. Inside, it smelled like someone else's life. Cologne too sweet, takeout containers stacked like trophies, a TV the size of a wall humming in the living room. Brent sat in a new leather recliner, sweatpants and tank top, beer sweating on the armrest. He barely looked up. Ownership had a posture in him. He muted the movie when he realized Mason wasn't a delivery guy. "Harold, sorry. Art, you're back." He flicked his eyes to Mason. "And you are?" "My name's Mason," my son said, voice a calm that pricked skin. "Arthur's son." Brent smiled like that explained everything. "Didn't know you were visiting. We've got it handled here." Mason walked in farther, taking inventory without touching. The sound system, the new furniture, the dent in the drywall at shoulder height that I pretended not to see. His eyes slid back to Brent. He was begging on State Street, Mason said, like a weather report. With a $10,000 pension in your hands and a power of attorney obtained with pressure and lies. Brent laughed. It rattled. He falls sometimes. He's old. He needs help. We pay the bills. Mason shrugged off his jacket, folded it over a dining chair, and rolled his shoulders. He didn't puff up. He didn't threaten. He just let Brent look at the thing he hadn't planned for. Another man who wouldn't flinch. Documents signed under duress aren't legal. And beating an elderly man, that's elder abuse. That's prison, Brent. Something flickered behind Brent's eyes. He looked around, measuring exits. It was subtle, but it was the first honest thing I'd seen him do in months. Then, in a burst he couldn't cover, he stood, grabbed his keys, and bolted. No shoes, no explanations. The front door banged open and the world snapped. His car roared away. I stood in the center of my living room, the TV flashing a gunfight across the wall where Rose's watercolor used to hang. Across from me, Mason breathed out. For the first time in months, I smiled. Not because anything was fixed, because the shape of the monster had changed. It bled when it was punched, metaphorically speaking.
He ran, I said. 2 words that felt like water in a desert. Bullies always do when they can't control the narrative, Mason said. He put a hand on my shoulder, grounding. Pack a bag. We're not staying here. Hotel tonight. Tomorrow we start making this right, legally, permanently. We moved through the house with intention. I found a manila folder I'd hidden behind old sweaters, bank statements from before the papers. Some part of me had known I would need my own voice again. The front door opened an hour later. Caroline. She froze when she saw Mason. Then she looked at me and panicked. "Dad, what have you told him?" "The truth," Mason answered, not looking away. "He was begging on a corner. He has bruises on his ribs. You drove a new car." Caroline's eyes filled. "You don't understand." "I understand this," I said. My voice surprised me. It had weight again. "I'm leaving. I'm pressing charges, and I'm not asking your permission." Her mouth opened, closed. She reached for me. I stepped back. Mason stayed between us. The world didn't end. We walked out. The door shut behind us with a sound like a gavel. On the way to the hotel, Mason called a name he already had ready. "Mark Holloway," he said into the phone. "Elder abuse attorney. Chicago. We'll be there at 9. Teaser. We didn't swing. We documented. Next stop, a law office in the Loop, a detective who's seen this movie before, and a forensic accountant who turns pain into spreadsheets. You can skip this video, sure, but someday when someone plays you for a fool, you'll wish you didn't hear how justice begins. Subscribe. Don't face that day unprepared.
In a glass office above the Chicago River, a lawyer turned my shame into evidence, and the law turned Brent's help into a felony. The Loop, on a weekday morning, hums with purpose. We rode the elevator to the 14th floor, and I watched the river slice the city into decision and delay. Holloway's office was all clean lines and certificates on the wall from places where justice isn't theoretical. He shook my hand like I might break, but looked me in the eye like I wouldn't. "Show me," he said. Mason opened his laptop. Photos of bruises, time-stamped and cataloged. The manila folder. Bank statements with highlighter bleeding truth. A timeline. The flood. The move-in. The card. The paperwork. The threats. I told the story out loud, and every time I faltered, Holloway didn't fill the space with pity. He filled it with questions. "The notary was paid cash?" he asked, pen moving. "No independent counsel for you. He tapped the power of attorney. Irrevocable, comprehensive, and done at your kitchen table.
This is textbook undue influence. He dialed without leaving the room. Adult Protective Services. CPD's Senior and Vulnerable Persons Unit. He asked for Detective Alana Ruiz like she was on speed dial. He called my bank to flag the accounts and freeze access. He filed an emergency petition to revoke the power of attorney and draft a restraining order. Mason paid the retainer before I could argue, sliding his card across the desk like it weighed nothing at all. Financial exploitation of an elderly person in Illinois is a felony. Depending on the amount, we're talking real time. He used legal documents to launder theft. He used his body to reinforce the lie. The law has a name for that combination.
By late afternoon, Detective Ruiz was at my house while I wasn't. Latina, early 40s, eyes like a hawk's. Holloway texted us as she walked Brent through the first cracks in his story. He falls, he gets confused. She held up photos of my bruises, the ones on my ribs shaped like fingers. Confused men don't bruise like that, she said. She asked to see the paperwork. Brent stalled. Caroline cried. Ruiz didn't blink. That evening in the hotel room, Mason turned the desk lamp so it didn't hit my eyes. "We need a forensic accountant," he said, and like he'd arranged it days ago, he had a name. Priya Shaw. She swallowed my statements whole and spit out meaning. "These aren't groceries," she said, tracing the spreadsheet with her finger. "This is Rivers Casino in Des Plaines. This is a down payment at a dealership in Forest Park. This is dinner at Gibson's, $286 twice a week. And this," she highlighted a cluster of charges, "are payments to high-interest personal loans. He's using your pension to plug holes in his own sinking ship." She built bar graphs and pie charts and pain made visible. In 3 months, $28,400 had bled from my accounts into a life I didn't live. The car Caroline drove? In my name. The signature? Forged, using the power of attorney as a weapon. Holloway filed the revocation. The judge signed it by 2 p.m. A bank manager called Mason to confirm Brent's access was frozen. If he wanted money, he'd have to ask me, in person, on paper, in front of people who no longer believed him. At night, I lay on the stiff hotel mattress and stared at the dark. Mason's laptop glowed. He Googled healing and redemption after betrayal, and the smallness of that kindness hurt more than my ribs. "We're going to make them pay back what they took," he said, "and we're going to make sure they never come near you again." If you've ever needed to hear that the law can be on your side, tap subscribe. Don't let anyone tell you abuse is just family business. Your click might give someone courage tonight. The bank said no, the debt collector said pay, and for the first time, Brent felt the floor drop out from under him. Friday, 8:47 a.m., Brent tried an ATM. Declined. He drove to the bank. The teller checked the screen, then called the manager. Her smile turned into a wall. "Mr. Hayes revoked the power of attorney. There's an investigation into financial exploitation. We can't give you access." He raised his voice, pulled out charm like a rusty tool. The manager did not care. An hour later, at a gas station on Harlem, his credit card declined. 2 hours after that, a man from a collection agency knocked on my front door, looking for Brent Nolan, past due on a personal loan, $3,200. He spoke in that calm debt collector cadence that says, "I will keep saying this until the sheriff serves papers." Caroline answered. The sunlight did not lie on her face the way it used to. By evening, there were 2 more knocks. A different agency, a different loan. A stack of notices on the kitchen table like a deck of bad omens. In a day, Caroline learned more about the man she married than in the years before. $85,000 in debt. Hidden, managed with my pension. I imagine their fight only because Holloway's investigator knows neighbors. You used my father's money to pay your gambling debts? She yelled. He yelled back. The same song, different verse. We needed that money. He wanted to help. Where do you think you've been living? For free? Meanwhile, Detective Ruse went door to door on my block, and Mrs. Evelyn Alvarez next door opened hers with hands trembling. I should have called you sooner, she told Ruse, and later me, tears in the corners of cataracted eyes. I saw him shove you last month. You fell against the porch rail, you looked right at my window and shook your head like, no, please. I didn't want to make it worse. You didn't, I told her when Holloway and I sat in her lavender living room on Saturday, teacups we didn't drink steaming between us. He made it worse. That's on him.
Ruiz pulled camera footage from 2 houses across the street, blurry but damning, Brent jerking my arm, me flinching when he raised his voice, him standing too close, a human wall. Combined with Priya's report, my photos, Mrs. Alvarez's statement, and the revocation order, the file had weight. The DA did not have to squint. Monday afternoon, a criminal summons arrived at my house with Brent's name on it. Elder financial exploitation, threats, assault. Caroline got a separate packet, civil suit for damages. Every dollar stolen, itemized, and named. It's peculiar how cathartic a number can be when it used to be just shame. That night, my phone lit with unknown. Caroline's voice was small, wavering. Dad, the police were here. They took the papers. Brent says we need $15,000 for a lawyer. We don't have it. We don't... I stared at the hotel wallpaper, the pattern repeating like bad habits. Where did my money go? I asked quietly. Pause. The way a person pauses when they finally understand there's no version of the story where they're the hero. I don't know, she whispered. Brent handled everything. Mason watched me. He has my face with Rose's eyes. What's going to happen to us? She asked. Consequences, I said. That's what happens now. My fingers shook when I hung up. Then they steadied. If this part made your chest tighten, don't ghost it. Hit that like button and subscribe, because storytelling for adults isn't just entertainment. Sometimes it's survival. She sat across from me at the coffee shop where we used to celebrate her report tarts. This time, I brought conditions instead of cupcakes. Intelligentsia on Broadway smells like beans and ambition. I chose it because it held a memory I trusted. Caroline's 6th grade smile after a spelling bee. Rose's hand wrapped around a mug. My own laugh, unguarded. Back then, we believed the world would treat us fairly if we worked hard and loved well. Mason and I sat together on one side of a small table. He was a quiet line of strength. Caroline walked in at 2:03, hair pulled back like she'd run out of lacquer and time. She reached for me, like the past could be a bridge. I put up my hand. She sat. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said. Her voice shook but didn't crack. I know I don't deserve it. I need you to hear me. I watched the foam slide down the inside of my cup. Then say it plain. I ignored things I didn't want to face. I let Brent talk for me. I saw the bruises and told myself, you fell. I liked the restaurant tables and the new car and the way it felt to say, we're doing fine. I'm not doing that anymore. She swallowed. I'll testify. I'll tell Detective Ruiz everything. I'll file for divorce. I'll pay you back what I owe. Mason spoke without heat. You're doing this because you got served. She had nodded. She didn't argue. Yes, and because I finally believed my dad over my husband, and because if I keep pretending, I'm the person I'm most afraid of being. I slid a piece of hotel stationery across the table, 4 bullet points in my own blocky architect handwriting. Here are my terms, I said. 1, full sworn statement to Detective Ruiz. No soft corners, no minimizing. 2, file for divorce this week, today if you can. 3, repayment plan with Holloway, for your portion. You owe me for what you spent, even if he swiped the card. 4, therapy, not 3 sessions a year. Work on why you traded your father for comfort.
And a 5th, Mason added gently, you accept that you don't get to set the pace of rebuilding. He does. Caroline cried then, not performatively. Shoulders shaking, palms open on the table like someone who finally ran out of deflections. Okay, she said, a small voice in a big room. Okay. At home that night, she recorded Brent when he called enraged, sent the audio to Holloway. You think you can walk away when I'm under attack? Brent shouted. You're nothing without me. Caroline's voice was new steel cold. I used to be, but not anymore. I gave my statement to a detective today. I filed for divorce. You can scream into a mirror. Goodbye, Brent. Wednesday morning, Holloway sent me to Dr. Hannah Mercer, geriatric psychiatrist. Brent's Hail Mary was a petition claiming I lacked capacity, that Mason was manipulating me. 3 hours of tests that felt like standing in a mirror maze. Recall, reason, draw a clock, plan a trip to the grocery store on a budget. Dr. Mercer didn't pat my hand. She took notes. She asked about architecture and grief, and how it feels when someone uses your love against you. That afternoon, Holloway emailed her report. Mr. Hayes demonstrates full cognitive capacity, memory intact, reasoning clear, no evidence of dementia or confusion. He is fully capable of managing his affairs. The judge denied Brent's petition in 4 hours flat. Transparently self-serving, the order read. I found myself laughing, out loud, in a hotel room. If you've ever had to set boundaries with your own blood, drop a comment that says stronger. Subscribe so you don't have to learn these lessons alone. He showed up in court like charm could change physics. The judge brought gravity. The courtroom on the 6th floor of the Daily Center was smaller than television taught me. Fluorescent light, wood paneling, flags in the corner. I wore a clean button-down and a blazer Rose bought me years ago. I refused to show up in the same clothes I'd worn on State Street. That man deserved compassion. This man required respect. Brent sat at the defense table alone. His public defender had advised him not to fight the civil case. Caroline sat behind me with her hands folded in her lap. No ring, hair pulled back, a new spine she was learning to stand on. Judge Phillips scanned the file with a speed that comes from being lied to all day, every day. She looked up, glasses halfway down her nose. Mr. Nolan, she said, you used legal documents to empty a man's accounts, force or threats to keep him quiet, and physical intimidation to maintain control. In Illinois, that's not a misunderstanding. That's a crime. Brent opened his mouth. She held up a hand. I've read enough. I've seen the photos. I've heard the recordings. Save your breath for the criminal case. She turned to me and Holloway. The court finds for the plaintiff restitution in the amount of $43,400 plus damages. Payment plan begins in 90 days. A permanent order of protection is granted. Mr. Nolan, you are to remain 500 feet from Mr. Hayes at all times. You will not contact him directly or indirectly. She signed the order with a pen that made a small, satisfying scratch. Then she looked back at Brent. The state's attorney will proceed with charges for elder financial exploitation and assault. I strongly recommend you retain counsel with your next phone call. Caroline's civil judgment was next, $8,500. Reduced because she cooperated fully. 60-day plan, no criminal charges. Her jaw clenched when the numbers landed. You could see the future she'd have to build without the scaffolding of denial. 2 days later, we stood on my front lawn with 2 CPD officers, Holloway, Mason, and a locksmith who smelled like metal and patience. Brent's truck was backed into the driveway. He loaded boxes fast, a friend helping, both men avoiding eye contact. He tried to talk to me. The officer stepped between us, palm up. No contact, sir. There's a protective order. Brent's eyes slid along the house, as if memorizing it for a story he'd tell where he wasn't the villain. Rage, regret, something unnamed. He slammed the truck door and drove off. The sound of the engine fading down our block felt like an ambulance leaving after you already know the patient's gone. The locksmith handed me the new keys. We stood at my front door. These are good locks. Nobody's getting in without your say-so.
I slid a key into the deadbolt. The click was louder than the L on Wabash. Mason and I walked into the living room. The giant TV still devoured the wall. The recliner hulked in the corner like a threat. "I don't want anything in this room that smells like him," I said, "even though I paid for it." "Especially because you paid for it," Mason said. Holloway nodded. "I'll arrange pickup for a shelter. Turn what he stole into what saves." I stood in my workshop, the room I'd cleared for a man who dismantled me, and put my hands on my drafting table. The nick in the right corner from the night Rose and I moved it in. The pencil groove where I'd chewed on deadlines. I hung a sketch of the mid-century modern I always wanted to build and never had a client brave enough to try. The room changed shape around me, returning to itself. That night, I slept in my own bed. Sheets Mason had bought. A Ring camera's green eye watched the porch. I woke at 12, at 2, at 4, heart sprinting for no reason. But each time I remembered, the deadbolt was mine. The house was mine. The silence was mine. If seeing the gavel drop brought you relief, hit like. Subscribe for more emotional storytelling and USA drama that ends not just with revenge, but with justice. Forgiveness didn't show up with the locks or the court order. Peace arrived slow, in cups of coffee and new rules with old blood. Sunday morning, Mason pulled a pan from my cabinet and made eggs like he used to when he was a broke 19-year-old visiting home. We ate on the back steps where the oak tree bends the sunlight. My phone buzzed. Mason glanced at the screen and raised an eyebrow. "Caroline." "Your call, Dad," he said. Not a challenge, an offering. I thought about the 10-year-old who used to fall asleep in the crook of my arm during thunderstorms, the teenager who slammed doors with Olympic force, the woman who had sat across from me at Intelligentsia and taken a list like a verdict. "Come by," I texted. 11. Mason will be here. She arrived on time. No makeup, sneakers, a purse that had seen better days. She did not try to hug me. She sat where the recliner used to be. The room looked lighter. "I filed for divorce," she said. "Kept my maiden name. I gave Detective Ruiz a full statement. 3 hours. It was a lot." She described how it felt to say out loud the things she used to fold into silence, how the truth has angles that cut and cauterize. I took a second job, retail in the mornings, hostessing at night. I moved to a studio in Logan Square. "I'm paying you back $141 a month. It'll take me years. That's okay." She wrung her hands once, then let them rest. I started therapy. The third session, I said Brent's name without apologizing for it. "Do you want forgiveness?" I asked. Not mean, just precise. She stared at my hands, the calluses from a lifetime of drawing lines and sanding wood. "I want the chance to be someone you'd choose to sit next to. If that takes years, okay. If it never happens, I'll still show up to pay what I owe." I unfolded another page from that same hotel notepad, a different list, not demands this time, terms of life. "Here's what I can do," I said. "I can answer your texts sometimes. I can have coffee with you in public places once a month. I can celebrate your birthdays and invite you to mine. I can say I love you and mean it. I cannot trust you with my bank account for a long time." She nodded, tears catching at the border of her vision.
"That's more than I deserve," she whispered. "Thank you." After she left, the house held the shape of the conversation, and then slowly exhaled. Mason stood at the sink, washing the plates out of habit. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Lighter. Sad. And lighter." I put my hand on the frame of the back door, the one I refinished after a winter storm years ago. I thought getting the house back would fix me. Turns out, healing's work too. Mason smiled. "You've always been good at work." He flew back to Denver Monday. We hugged on the porch. "Call me every day," I said, like I did when he moved to college. He laughed. "I'm 36, Dad." Then softer. "Okay." I made coffee from the good beans. The porch light glowed in the early evening. Mrs. Alvarez clipped roses next door and waved with the hand that still shakes. I waved back. The Ring camera blinked green. The pension deposited into an account only my fingers could open. I booked a ticket to visit Mason in September, meet my grandsons properly, take them to the Field Museum, and show them how a man can survive and still learn.
I called my old firm. "If you ever need a set of eyes on a project," I said to the new managing partner, "I still see things." He said to come in next week. He didn't say it to be nice. He said it like he meant it. You can't buy that feeling. You earn it back, one morning at a time. From State Street to this porch, the distance is only 7 miles. The journey was longer. Betrayal will do that, stretch a city into a lifetime. This was supposed to be a revenge story. It is, sort of, but it's also a love and betrayal story, a healing and redemption story, a USA drama with a clear moral. Trust is a privilege. Family is not a free pass. Justice is how love defends itself when love alone isn't enough. If you're standing on your version of State Street right now, holding something like a paper cup and a little hope, hear me. You are not weak. You are in a situation that requires more strength than you've ever had to use. You have it. I promise you. I didn't believe that 2 weeks ago. Now, the lock clicks under my hand and the house says my name back. That's enough. That's everything. Don't leave without subscribing. Stories like this remind us what it means to be human. If this ending gave you peace, hit like and share it. Somebody out there needs to hear that it's not too late to come home.